Hi guys, this is Mattiace, and a lot of you guys have been asking me about the gang-related violence that's happening in Sweden because of the fact that it has been announced that the Swedish Prime Minister, his name is Ulf Kristersson, yes, that's another Uffe Puffe actually, he has announced now that he's going to talk to the military to see if they can coordinate it so that the military can help the police deal with this violent escalation. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, why am I not sitting in front of my computer sharing all this information where I can explain all this in a more fact-based manner? Now, the reason for that is because there isn't all that much facts to discuss at the time of shooting this video. So far, nothing has really been announced. They are going to talk about it, and the only thing that's actually interesting to discuss, if we want to be specific about this is the reactions from different parts of the political spectrum in Sweden. Now, obviously, there are a lot of people that are really against this proposal, and there are a lot of people that are for it. Now, the people that are against it are the people that normally are considered woke, the leftists, the liberals, and another way to express it is to say those people that are the reason for this happening in the first place. They are now against doing something, mainly because now their failure and their lies are being exposed. You can see now that over the last 20 or 30 years, these people that were advocating for this mass immigration and calling everybody a racist for bringing up whatever problem, which there are many, they have a harder and harder time now recognizing the problems, and this is kind of a confirmation for those people that were critical to mass immigration in the first place. Now, one of the things that needs to happen for this actually to take effect is that Sweden needs to change some of the laws, and these are some severe changes that needs to happen in the Swedish constitution before this can take place, and that is something that I'm sure a lot of people are pointing out. There's also a lot of people that are just calling this a spectacle. They think that this is just theater, and that it's just a show, like they want to give the impression that they're doing something when in fact this is never going to be able to happen. I can't say one way or another which one is, or whether or not it's likely that the military is actually going to do police work or assist the police in some special operations, I guess. But it is a confirmation that the situation is really bad in Sweden. Now, this is not something that has happened just recently. The violence and the criminality in Sweden has slowly increased year by year due to immigration from certain countries, mainly North Africa and the Middle East. And what I'm to say is that different kinds of crimes have always been easier to hide than these more spectacular crimes that we have seen more and more in the recent years. It's much easier to hide an escalation in rape or robbery or personal assault, stuff like that. That is easy to hide because there are very few people that see it. There's no real footage evidence. There is very rarely any videos from rape, even though many of these rapists actually film themselves. But media has been very successful when it comes to covering up these problems in the past. The things that have not been so easy to cover up is when these immigrants are burning all the cars that we've seen a lot of in Sweden. Explosions are very hard to hide, and of course shootings are very hard to hide. Now, the ironic thing about this is that these so-called these crimes that are the highest on the, we say, strafflista, that gives the highest the longest prison sentences. Normally these crimes only so far anyway has almost exclusively been different gangs, different criminals attacking one another. So the general public has, for the most part, been kept outside of this. And this is, of course, something that most people consider a good thing. When criminals shoot other criminals and you are not affected yourself, then people do not really get as emotionally affected by that kind of criminality. The problem, of course, is that this doesn't change the fact that rape, robbery, and assault and other crimes versus your everyday Swedish person, those crimes have not declined or anything, but media now have another thing to fill up their headlines with, so that it might seem like, yeah, it's those crimes that would actually affect you and me, they almost never talk about it anymore. Like if I watch media now, they never talk about rape, robbery, and assault anymore. At first, like up until like 2010-15, when this was a massive escalation, they were able to hide it based on the fact that there wasn't enough evidence for people to actually make big headlines of it. They could suppress it. Then when it was getting harder and harder to suppress it, there was a time for a few years when they did bring up rape, robbery, and assault because it became, it got to the point where it was, all these journalists started losing credibility for hiding it. Now it's at the point where they don't need to talk about the things that makes it really dangerous for the average Swedish person, because now they can talk about the gang-related crimes instead, and that works as the smoke and mirror argument. However, there has been some actual innocent casualties in these crimes as well. There was recently a woman who died in a gang-related explosion, even though she had nothing to do with that conflict whatsoever. And people have been accidentally shot several times in Sweden when the gunman was actually aiming for a rival gang member, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I will cover this more when I have more information. Right now, the problem is that there isn't all that much information. It's talks, there's been an announcement, and there's a whole lot of emotional statements from every spectrum of the political side in Sweden. And I think one of the best things about this, at least from my perspective, is that, well, at least it gets some attention. Thank you for watching.